Al Jazeera podcasts.
Today, a week of Israeli attacks on Lebanon.
The Israeli army has been issuing repeated forced evacuation orders for parts of the capital. More than 330 people have been killed by Israeli attacks in Lebanon alone in the last week.
As bombardment, displacement, and ground fighting intensify, a familiar question is back. After all these years, what is Israel really trying to do in Lebanon? I'm David Enders, and this is The Take. Before we continue with today's show, leave us a comment telling us what you think about this episode and how you're following the latest developments in Lebanon. And on your podcast app, leave us a review telling us where you're listening from, and give us a 5-star rating while you're there. It helps the show.
I'm Hala Jaber. I am a British Lebanese journalist. I worked for many years with the Sunday Times. I'm a 6-time award-winning correspondent.
Hala, welcome to The Take. Thank you for joining us under what I know are difficult circumstances. Israel has been relentlessly bombing Lebanon all across the country for a week now. 500,000 people have been displaced in a country of fewer than 6 million people. Rights groups are openly saying Israel is extending its Gaza playbook to Lebanon, meaning collective punishment, mass forced displacement, and widespread fear among civilians. What are you seeing where you are, and how seminal a moment is this in the history of Lebanon?
So this will not be the first time that Israel has launched war on Lebanon. And however, this time it's quite severe. You mentioned 500,000 displaced. That's the numbers that have been registered for shelters. But the actual number of displacements is much higher. Remember, many people come, they rent flats, or they have families and friends that they stay with. As far as the bombings are concerned, Israel is actually, at the moment, it seems to be on a course of vengeance, because much of the bombing is indiscriminate. And most of these, as we've seen from images and footage, these are buildings, civilians that are being demolished into dust. And the Israelis are trying to penalize the population or the Shiite community. They're trying to pressure it and force it to turn, they're trying to pressure it so that it indirectly turns against Hezbollah, which it supports. This is what Israel is trying to do by doing mass bombings, mass destructions, mass demolitions of entire neighborhoods. It is trying to force the people to finally get fed up and say enough with Hezbollah. So as for Beirut itself, there's masses of displaced people. Beirut is the infrastructure is not great. So there's, at the moment, the weight of it all is on the capital itself. The streets are packed with people. There were people still that haven't been sheltered. So you have a lot of people still out on the streets, along the seafront or in certain roads or neighborhoods waiting. It is actually quite miserable, depressing, and sad to see this is happening.
And that question about the Israeli strategy of trying to turn people against Hezbollah, where is that effective? Is that a fundamental misunderstanding on their part of the dynamics?
Look, there's always going to be a number of people that are disenfranchised or angry, an immediate human reaction to their situation. But the idea that they can turn a community against Hezbollah, a community that is sort of, if you want, entwined ideologically, socially, marital-wise, every day within this organization, it is an impossibility. Israel has tried this before. It's a playbook they have tried before. They have failed, and they will fail again. On the contrary, generally speaking, in situations like this, you find that actually the community rallies around the group because they feel that the group is being, there's an attempt to annihilate it, to decapitate it, to finish it off. So people do not withdraw from it. On the contrary, they rally around it and they support it. So Hezbollah is not going to lose support as a result of this. But people are angry. And it's important to also clarify one thing. People are not angry with Hezbollah. Hezbollah did not start this war last week on Monday. This war was started 15 months ago by Israel, which refused to abide by the ceasefire, which has continuously bombed Lebanon and South Lebanon and the Bekaa and Hezbollah community, killing over 400 and carrying out over 11,000 violations, breach of a ceasefire, destroying villages in its entirety. When the war happened last year and Israel was trying to invade Lebanon, there are some villages they couldn't get or occupy or control. Now that the ceasefire happened and Hezbollah carried out and withdrew from that part of South Lebanon, we find the Israelis coming in and destroying these villages. Everything they couldn't achieve last year in the war, they have done now. So no, people are not going to sort of abandon Hezbollah because people are very aware that this war was just a matter of time, that Hezbollah will have to respond. You cannot just sit back and take it and allow Israel to continue doing this. They allowed it for 15 months, hoping that a diplomatic solution would come, hoping that the international world will pressure Israel to stop doing this, to cease, and giving the Lebanese government time to fix it. Everyone failed. So Hezbollah acted rightly because according to international law, it has the right to defend itself.
The Lebanese government has formally moved from a position where it approves of resistance toward Israel to criminalizing Hezbollah's activities. Now, that happened last week. The Prime Minister, Nawaf Salam, announced that it would no longer be considered legal for Hezbollah to resist.
The Lebanese government calls for the immediate banning of all of Hezbollah's security and military activities, as it is considered against the law to give up its weapons to the Lebanese state.
In practice, we've seen in the past few days exactly what you're talking about, fierce ground battles between Hezbollah and the Israeli military as they attempt to advance. What do you think the significance of the government's announcement is, and what is the likelihood that it will be followed by any sort of real action?
Look, for 15 months, this government has done very little to bring about a solution or to force Israel through the committee that was set up in South Lebanon to monitor the situation post a ceasefire agreement. And they failed. They demanded that Hezbollah, according to the ceasefire that Lebanon signed onto, that Hezbollah withdraws from those areas. They did. To demilitarize that particular area. They did. To allow the Lebanese army to take over control of that area. They did. To hand over the tunnels and the warehouses along those areas. They did. So as far as Hezbollah is concerned, they fulfilled each and every requirement of that ceasefire agreement. The agreement also stipulated that both sides should not carry out attacks on each other, but both sides have the right to defend in case of that. Hezbollah has not. Actually, it stood down, it stood back. It gave the government a chance to do something because the government, and the government hardly, sometimes, there were attacks and there were people killed. They didn't even make a statement of denunciation. Like I said, over 11,000 violations, over 400 people killed within that period, 15 months of that period. And the government continuously argued that the Lebanese army is capable and this is very important, the Lebanese army will be the sole body or institution responsible for protecting the country's sovereignty and the country's territory. So, accordingly, the Lebanese army should be in charge currently of fighting back or defending Lebanon. Instead, the government withdrew the Lebanese army. When you have an enemy invading and occupying your country, and your government turns around and tells the military, step down, do nothing, and basically be observers, and remove them from the entire area that Hezbollah had withdrawn from, leaving it vulnerable to every Israeli wish, and then have the audacity to say to Hezbollah, you do not have the right to go and defend that territory. And that territory actually belongs to the people of Hezbollah, to the families, they hail from them. These are their territories, these are their villages, these are their towns. And you're being told by the government you're not allowed to. So yes, the government issued statement, criminalized its involvement. But as you've seen, and I think the General Secretary of Hezbollah said in his statement, this is their right, and actually laid it out that yes, we've been patient. That's him saying, not me, not we, as in me. That they've been patient, and that they've given everybody a chance, and that they didn't start this war, and now they have to respond, which they're doing. So they're ignoring the government's demands at the moment because they feel they're in the right.
When people characterize this as Hezbollah making a bad choice or a suicidal choice, it's from their perspective very much the opposite.
From Hezbollah's perspective, it is the opposite. Look, I don't think Hezbollah is necessarily saying that, they don't underestimate themselves and they don't overestimate themselves. They're not saying that they are at par militarily with Israel. Just like Iran is not at par militarily with the United States. But what they can do is they can actually cause havoc and pressure and pain and inflict pain to the point where the sides will eventually have to sit down, whether directly or indirectly, and come up with an agreement that is not a flimsy agreement like for the last, I don't know how long they've been coming up with. If you want to sort this out, there is a way to sort it out, but it has to be genuine. And it has to be bulletproof, and it has to be with guarantees for both sides, and in particular for Lebanon, because Lebanon seems to be the weaker side, and Lebanon is always the one that gets the brunt of it. For the time being, yes, Hezbollah feels that it is on the right path. Hezbollah did not start the war on Monday when it fired the 6 missiles. This war was started on Hezbollah 15 months ago. Hezbollah on Monday responded to 15 months of attacks against it. So they will continue. I think they have reached also a point where now this is a break or make. You see, there's an internal force fighting them that wants to also finish them off, and they're being fought externally by Israel and others that also want to see an end of them. So Hezbollah is being sort of attacked internally and externally. And it's reached this point where this is now a war of existential. It is either we survive or we go down.
And where do you see things going in the coming days? And I also just wanted to ask you, sometimes people I know, they say, well, why should we pay attention to this tiny country that seems to have such an outsized sorrows? Lebanon has endured much more than most countries much bigger. What do you tell people? How do you frame it?
Look, sometimes even I despair, and sometimes I feel down, and sometimes but I always, even through that, I always sort of smile and say, but we've been this before. We've been there before. We've done this before. We've been there. We've done that. We've got t-shirts for it, and we survived, and we rose, and we rebuilt. And even in the midst of war, even when bombs are dropping, if you go to a restaurant, you'll find it packed. One neighborhood away. Life goes on. during the Civil War, we lived one day at a time, not knowing how the Civil War, because, all neighborhoods were impacted. The fighting was close quarters. So we used to wake up in the morning and say, okay, if we go through today and it's fine, tomorrow is another day. So let's make the best out of the day. And that spirit continues. I think we've been trained. I think somewhere in our psyche, there is a training there that kicks in. But also, I always say, this country will never be allowed to have peace. And I always think about it as this beautiful woman, okay, this really beautiful, stunning woman that everyone wants a part of. And no one can get fully. And therefore, they will all fight over her. And as a result, she is not at peace and no one around her is at peace. This is Lebanon. This is what they're doing with Lebanon. This is how they see Lebanon. And if it was so insignificant, why have they got the second largest American embassy on earth in this tiny, insignificant country? What's that all about? It's because of Israel. Everyone is dispensable. Every country is dispensable as long as Israel is protected. And the more we see this, the more hardened we become and the more cynical we become, and we don't believe anything. And now I'm talking as a Lebanese and as part of the community that's being under attack. I take nothing of what the Americans say as truth. I dread that if Israel decides to expand and starts hitting civilian areas. So far, if you want, they've concentrated in the south, in Dahiyeh and the Bekaa. But if they start hitting Beirut itself or the infrastructure like they're doing in Iran, they start hitting, for example, water systems or electricity or power or what have you, or telephones, which is already very fragile in Lebanon. So imagine what disaster that would have. These are the things that worry us. These are the things that worry me. My Civil War training instinct, survival mode kicked in. So I was stocking up on things we used to do then, and we don't really have to do now, but it came in. So I made sure that I stocked up on this, that, and the other, water, candles. Yeah, I mean, it's all crazy, but you start doing that. I always expect the worst. And there's one saying in Lebanon that has never failed me. You think you've seen it all, and then the worst is always yet to come. This is what I expect.
Hala, thank you for taking the time today to join us. We really, really appreciate your insights.
Thank you, David. It was a pleasure, and thank you everybody for watching.